Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Carolina and I am super excited for today's video because it's only 2 days until Christmas. It's Tuesday today and you might be thinking like, what, 2 days? Well, we celebrate Christmas on the 24th of December because that's our Polish tradition. So I have a lot to get through because I'm going to be doing all of my Christmas dishes today. So that's a lot to go through, but we will manage. So this video will be split into two, and in this video I'm going to show you some savoury recipes, and if you click on the link here you can check out my two vegan Christmas desserts. And I mentioned the word vegan, you might be thinking like, what? Well, I'm transitioning into a vegan lifestyle and I want to encourage some of you guys to become vegan or maybe try out being more plant-based, because yeah, it's a good thing to save the animals and save the environment and to be more conscious of what you eat and how you're treating the environment and the animals. So in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you 5 different savoury vegan Christmas dishes. So the first one is going to be 2 different types of herring. So that's 2 different styles of herring, and that's very traditional on the Polish Christmas table. I'm going to be sharing with you Greek style fish. I don't think it has anything to do with Greece, but that's what we call it, obviously without the fish. I'm going to be sharing with you a Russian style pierogi and a vegan meatloaf. So let's get right into this video, let's get cooking. Alright, so I have my ingredients here and I have 1000 grams of king oyster mushrooms, I have some nori sheets, that is seaweed sheets, I have rice wine vinegar, and I also have soy sauce. Over here I also have a big pot full of boiling water, salted, and then over there I have around 1 litre of water and I need to boil that. So first thing we have to do is chop up the mushrooms. So I don't know if you've prepared herring before, but basically what it is a really salty fish, and the shape of it resembles kind of like a rhombus shape. So we have to, when we're chopping these, we have to aim for that, so we kind of give it that, it resembles the herring at least a little bit. So let's give this a go. So first, let's make our broth. So what we have to do now is add a couple of sheets of the nori seaweed. You can also use any other seaweed that you have available. This was, the nori seaweed was what was available to me at the time. So don't worry if you have other seaweed. I might actually add the whole, I'm just gonna go in and add the whole thing actually. There's no point in me keeping this, I don't have anywhere to keep this. So, 1 28 gram packet of seaweed is in. Now that water is boiling there, as you can see, but we're gonna chuck the mushrooms in now. So the mushrooms are all in and we wanna just blanch them for a couple of minutes. We don't wanna boil them too much, but obviously because they are mushrooms, you want to boil out some of that mushroomy taste and smell to them, because they're meant to resemble fish and we want to make it as traditional as possible because it is Christmas in the end. Let's go back to our broth. So to our broth we're going to add about 10 to 12 tablespoons of soy sauce to this, and we also have a rice wine vinegar. There you go. Alright, I added 11 in total because I am doing this recipe for the first time and I want to make sure that, you know, it tastes good. Right, so we need to bring this to a boil. So my mushrooms have now been strained, as you can see, they're nice and soft, and what I need to do now is I have my broth here and I need to strain it because I want to get rid of that seaweed. So I'm going to pass it through a sieve. Now we have to add the mushrooms to it. So now what we're going to do with this is we're going to leave this overnight. You want to let this cool down and then you want to put this in the fridge, and after they have soaked all of this liquid in, we're going to prepare the 2 types of herring that I talked about. Right, so it's now been over 12 hours, so I've left these mushrooms, as you can see, in the fridge overnight, and this is what's happened. And now we're going to make the 2 types of herring. So or pretend herring. So I have a little bit of groundnut oil in the pan. You can use any sort of oil, but I just wanted to try this oil out. And I have 5 medium-sized onions chopped up into these little ovals, as you can see. And what I'm gonna do, I need to fry this, okay. And then we're gonna add some stuff to it.
So the onions are frying and we need to give them around 10 minutes. And what we're also going to need is a teaspoon of pepper, around 100 millilitres of any sort of oil you'd like. I'm using groundnut oil. Salt, tomato puree, about a couple of tablespoons I'm going to use, and some gingerbread seasoning. So what's in this is, you can look it up on Google, but basically it's cinnamon, ground ginger, ground nutmeg, ground cloves, and I think that's it. So yeah, that's what I did. I just mixed these together and that's what you get. And also, we need about half a cup or a cup's worth of soaked overnight sultanas or raisins. So I soaked them and then I squeezed the water out, and then we're going to pop this in there. So now we're going to add the remaining ingredients. So the raisins, the gingerbread spice, the salt, a bit of pepper. Then we're going to add tomato concentrate or tomato puree. About 3 tablespoons like that. And then we're going to add 100 millilitres of groundnut oil. Alright, give it a stir. So, you want to turn the heat off on these onions. What you want to do next, you want to get 2 jars that you can seal. You want to get your mushrooms. So, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be layering this into the jars. So, I think 1 jar is going to be enough, but I'm not sure, so right, so we're going to put a mixture, a little bit of the onion mixture in there on the bottom. And then we're going to fish out some of those mushrooms and put those in there one by one. So make sure to wash your hands before. Okay, so you want about this many mushrooms in there, just enough to cover those bottom onions. Now you want more onions to cover these mushrooms.
So this is what you have, and you want to let this cool down. You want to lock it obviously, and you want to let it cool down, preferably somewhere outside. That's what I'm going to do because the fridge is not the best idea right now. I have a little bit of the onions left, so if you do that, don't waste it, just put it in a small jar. You can always freeze it if you don't want more, or you can just layer it again in this tiny little jar. So put this aside, and yeah. Okay, so now let's move on to the second type of mushrooms, which is just going to be raw onions. So I chop these into like half ovals, like so. Now I'm going to transfer them into this bigger bowl.
So what we're going to need is 100 millilitres of any oil. I'm using groundnut oil again. We're also going to need 2 tablespoons of rice wine vinegar, a bit of pepper, and a teaspoon of salt. And give this a mix. Alright, and you want to set this aside to rest for around 30 minutes. Right, so now that these onions have rested for about half an hour, what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer. So I have a glass dish, and I'm going to put a layer of those onions on the bottom, and then I'm going to layer these mushrooms. Alright, so now you want to cover this with some cling film, and just like with the other mushrooms, you want to leave them to chill, preferably overnight, and that's when they're going to be best to consume. So let's do that.
Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to make a very traditional Polish Greek style fish.
So I have about 1 kilogram of carrots here, 1 kind of medium-sized celeriac root. I have 2 parsnips, 300 grams of tomato puree, I have 2 medium-sized onions, I have 400 grams of smoked tofu, fish seasoning, and some breadcrumbs.
So I'm going to, oh actually before I move on, I just wanted to show you this carrot because it's so funny. It looks like a little, I don't know, a little man. What does this remind you of, Harry? It looks like that carrot from the carrot
the carrot
commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He finally got what he wanted. He's having a Merry Christmas.
You fancy?
See his little eyeballs. so happy. Yay, yay.
Alright, so now you're going to grate these. You're
I'm going to grate the... What? He just celebrated. And now he's going to get grated from head to toe.
Sorry, but you have to be sacrificed today. Well, you're going to grate all of these for me if that's okay. Yeah. And then I'll show you what's next. Alright, so I've got my grated vegetables in here. And I've got it on the highest heat. I'm going to add the fried onions. And you're going to want to cover the vegetables with water just until you can see the water above the vegetables a little. You want to add some 2 teaspoons of salt, a couple of bay leaves. I'm going to add about 4, and also some juniper berries. Let it cook, so it will probably be about half an hour, but you will know once it's reduced. You will know that it's ready, and then we'll add the tomato paste. I'm going to prepare the tofu. So you're going to want to chop this up into kind of like 1 centimeter thick slices. So like so. Alright, now for the breadcrumbs. So we're going to put a little bit of breadcrumbs in here. Just enough to cover all these slices of tofu. And then we're going to add some fish seasoning to it. About this much. We're going to give it a quick mix. And now you're going to want to cover all sides of the tofu in this breadcrumb mixture. And you also want to make sure not to have your pan on too high heat, because otherwise the crumbs are going to burn very quickly. So you want to make sure they're like this, nice and golden brown, and then you can take them off, put them aside, and then do the other batch, and then just repeat that however many times you need to. And make sure that you get rid of all the breadcrumbs in the pan before frying the next batch, because you don't want them to burn. And add a bit of oil and then fry the next batch. So it's been about 20 minutes maybe. I've been cooking this, and I'm gonna now add the tomato puree and then cook it for another 20 minutes. So this is really gonna thicken it, and then we're gonna have to cool it down, and then I'll show you what to do next. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to actually put the Greek style fish together. So we're going to put a little bit of this vegetable mixture on the bottom. I just forgot to say, I took all the juniper berries and the bay leaves out so that nobody chokes on them. And now I'm going to place the tofu. Okay, and then we put more of this on top. I'm not going to have room to put it in the fridge, so I'm going to store it in our shed outside, because that's going to be a safe place and it's going to be cold. So, yeah. What?
News to me.
Why are you laughing? Your eyes though, you were like...
We're going to put what in the shed? Some fish in the shed.
Alright, so our Greek style fish, or tofu, is right here underneath. So I've covered this, and also I don't want to store it in the fridge. This hair is so weirded out. But you can't store it in the fridge because it's still hot, and I can't leave it outside, like in a room temperature room, because then it's going to go bad. So we're going to go take this into the shed, which is this way, guys. Oh! Right, so now let's move on to the pierogi. So what we're going to need is around 8 potatoes. So I have a couple of big potatoes and then some smaller ones.
We need 1 onion, a bit of parsley, some spring onions, tofu, plain flour, salt, a little bit of olive oil, and 1 lemon.
So the first thing we're going to want to do is peel those potatoes and cook them. So the first thing you're going to want to do is peel these potatoes, cook them, and make sure that they have cooled down before making the filling for the pierogi. So, ta-da! And now I'm gonna chop these up. And now that I have these chopped up, I'm gonna put them into this pot of salty boiling water. Cover the top and wait until the potatoes are soft inside. So now let's move on to the pierogi dough. And we're gonna need 6 full cups of plain flour. We're gonna need 2 teaspoons of salt. Make sure to give that a quick mix. And then we're gonna add, make sure that you've boiled some water, and we're gonna add 1 cup and 3/4 of a cup of water. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna have to let this rest for about 20 minutes to half an hour. Make sure this cools down, and then we're gonna knead this. Right, so let's now move on to the filling for the pierogi. So we wanna have, I have chopped up the spring onions, the parsley. I have chopped up my onion and fried it in just a little bit of oil. I have my lemon, I have my cooled down potatoes. They're still a bit warm, but when I mash them, it will be fine. And then I also have my tofu. So let's mash these potatoes first. All right, that is mashed. You now want to crumble your tofu, and you can use the masher as well. And also at this stage, you want to squeeze in the juice of a lemon. You're also going to want to add a bit of salt. So I'm adding a bit, about this much, so that's about 1/2 tablespoon, I would say. So you want to add in your fried onions, and you also want to add your greens. Right, so you want to make sure that you taste it. Yep, that is delicious. We're going to move on to our dough. So what we need to add to this dough is 4 tablespoons of olive oil. And now you're going to want to knead this. So personally, I think I'm going to need a little bit more hot water. So I'm just going to add it right in. Alright, so this dough looks good. And now we're going to form our pierogi. And you're going to want to get about 1/4 or 1/5 of the dough, because you don't want to have to roll out too much. Also, you will want to get a cookie cutter this size, so about, I'm not sure, 10 centimeters? Is that? I don't know. So you want to roll out this dough, and you want to make sure that it's nice and thin. You don't want thick dough. Perfect consistency. And now you want to get your filling, so you can form like little balls out of the filling, and you want to place it a little bit away from the edge. Make sure not to overfill. I might have overfilled this one. So around, like, I would say it's a 1.5 teaspoons of the filling. You want to just take the other side, or the edge of the dough, and flip it over the filling, like so. And then you want to make sure you press down the edges so that they stick together. You need to make sure that your pierogi don't open when they're cooking, because that's a disaster. Okay, and then you take your cutter and do that. You take this piece, you go around the edge with your fingers, and then you do a nice little pattern. Okay, so there you have it. I'm gonna go make the rest of these, and I will show you the end result. Alright, so I have my water boiling for the pierogi, and I'm gonna boil them now. I put a tablespoon of salt in it, and it's boiling now, so I'm gonna put a couple of dumplings in. Alright, so I don't know if you can see the difference, but they do look cooked. I don't know.
They have a texture. Bring it close to the camera. You see they're a bit more waxy in a sense.
Yes. So you want to take them out now and let them rest on a plate, and then you want to move them to a dry plate because there's going to be a lot of water here. Okay, so now onto the meatloaf. So I have here around 2,200 grams of mushrooms, just regular mushrooms. So I used around 2 big boxes of those small white mushrooms, and then I also had 3 large mushrooms. So I chopped all of these up and then I fried them in a bit of oil. I also have what's this called, buckwheat, 400 grams of buckwheat, and I cooked that. Before cooking it though, I also rinsed it in a bit of water, and then I cooked it for around 15 to 20 minutes, and then I let it sit on the hob for a little while, and it's nice and soft and squishy. I also have 2 large onions. I fried those. I have 1 cup of oat flour, half a cup of cornstarch, or you can use potato starch. We're going to also use 2 tablespoons of salt, some mixed herbs, and a tablespoon of pepper. So we're going to place everything. So the first thing I'm going to place in here is the mushrooms and the buckwheat, and what we're going to want to do is mash these a little together with a potato masher. At this stage, I'm also going to put the onions in. So I can't really blend everything nicely together, and I want this to be a little bit mushy, but obviously I want to have some chunks in there as well. So what I'm going to do is use my Vitamix and blend some of this in the Vitamix, and then mix it together. I think this is going to make it a lot better. Right, so when you're doing this, don't bother to use the potato masher, just use a blender, and make sure that you leave a little bit of the mixture unblended, so that way it has a nice consistency, because with the potato masher it would have been impossible to do this. So now I'm going to put in my oat flour, my cornstarch, and 2 tablespoons of salt, 1, 2, and a heaping tablespoon of pepper, some of this mixed herbs seasoning. This is really messy, so I would advise to get a bigger bowl or just do it in a big pot, because I can hardly mix this together. Let's get our tins. So I greased and floured the tins. So I covered them in a bit of oil, butter, or you can use oil as well, and then I put a little bit of breadcrumbs in there to make sure that it's all the sides and the bottom are covered. And now I'm gonna fill these up, and now I'm gonna bake these at 180 degrees, and they're gonna stay in there for around 70 minutes. So off they go. Alright guys, so let me just move this light up a little. So this is it, we have made it. It took us about 15 hours to do all of this, but we managed. This is all the food, and it's going to feed the whole family. So we have our tofu, Greek style tofu, we have our 2 types of herring or mushrooms, we have our dumplings / pierogi, and we have our meatloaf. How fantastic, I'm so excited. Obviously these haven't stayed in the fridge overnight yet, so make sure to do that. Make sure to cover them in cling foil, make sure to keep everything in the fridge, and yeah, enjoy it on your Christmas Eve, and I hope that you will try some of these recipes because these are really tasty. I haven't tried each thing because obviously I'm going to wait till Christmas, but each component tasted delicious, so I'm really excited. The pierogies are really nice because I have tried those. So make sure to give these recipes a try. And yes, please like this video if you enjoyed it. Also subscribe to my channel if you are new and if you like my videos and if you like seeing me. And yes, I'm super excited for Christmas. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and spend it with your loved ones. I know that we can't spend it with everyone, but this is all we can do, so enjoy it, make the most of it, and I know that next Christmas will be a lot better. So without further ado, I will now go and clean my house and yeah, have Christmas tomorrow because it's Thursday tomorrow. So yeah, lots of love, and I will see you in my next video.